Was Jesus Christ a married man? If so, was Mary Magdalene his wife? Did they have any children? Was it Christ's plan to turn the church over to Mary Magdalene because he loved her above all others? Was Jesus the original feminist? Do the Gnostic Gospels paint a picture of liberated women while the New Testament suppresses women? The answers to these questions have been the basis of a great deal of speculation and controversy. The Da Vinci Code clearly presents Christ as a married man, the husband of Mary Magdalene. Sir Lee Teabing, the fictional scholar in Dan Brown's book, states that the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene is part of the historical record. Moreover, Jesus as a married man makes infinitely more sense than our standard biblical view of Jesus as a bachelor. Dan Brown is not the first to make this claim, nor the only one to impact our society with this view. In 1988, Martin Scorsese directed the movie The Last Temptation of Christ, where Jesus is presented as the husband of Mary Magdalene. Before this, the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar implied a love relationship between Jesus and Mary. Several books upon which Brown based his novel make this very claim. While not an official doctrine of the Mormon Church, a great number of Mormons believe that Christ was married and that Mary was his wife. But is there any real evidence for this position, or is this another case of fiction over fact? Robert Langdon, the hero and Harvard professor in the Da Vinci Code, tells us that Christ would have been married because it was the cultural norm of his day. Langdon says, Jesus was a Jew, and the social decorum during that time virtually forbid a Jewish man to be unmarried. According to Jewish custom, celibacy was condemned. Adding to this theory, Langdon and Teabing cite the Gnostic Gospels as evidence for Christ's marriage to Mary Magdalene. Historical facts, however, reveal that such arguments are as fictional as the characters in the Da Vinci Code. The thought of an unmarried rabbi being unheard of or unusual is historically false. The custom calling for rabbis to be married developed after the time of Christ. It is not part of the Old Testament law, but is instead part of the oral tradition later written down in the Jewish Talmud, sometime around the 2nd century A.D. But even the Talmud makes reference to an unmarried rabbi. During Christ's time, we know of an entire faction of Jewish teachers where the majority was unmarried, the sect known as the Essenes. Most scholars believe the Essenes were responsible for writing the Dead Sea Scrolls. This group practiced celibacy, and most male members were unmarried. While Christ was not part of this sect, the Essenes do establish historically that there were unmarried Jewish teachers during the time of Christ. Furthermore, it should be noted that while Jesus was a teacher sent by God, he was not an official rabbi recognized by the Jewish Sanhedrin. This is why the Jewish leaders of Jesus' day questioned his authority. Therefore, what later applied to Jewish rabbis originating from oral traditions need not apply to Jesus. Likewise, the argument that the Gnostic Gospels show Mary Magdalene as Christ's wife is false. While Mary Magdalene is certainly an important person in the Gnostic Gospels, none of them present her as Christ's wife. For example, the Gnostic Gospel of Philip calls Mary the companion of Christ, along with Jesus' mother and aunt. In the Da Vinci Code, Lee Teabing says that the word companion is an Aramaic word which literally means spouse. The facts, however, are that the Gospel of Philip was not written in Aramaic, but was written in Coptic, an Egyptian language based on Greek. The word used for companion comes from the Greek, the word kinonos, and means friend or associate, not spouse. Another fallacious claim is that the Gospel of Philip says that Jesus often kissed Mary Magdalene on the mouth. The section of the text where this claim is made is extremely worn, with large gaps in the narrative. It does tell us that Christ kissed Mary Magdalene, but it does not tell us that he kissed her on the mouth. The text, as we have it, reads, "As for the wisdom who is called the barren, she is the mother, angels, and the companion of the Mary Magdalene. her more than the disciples, kiss her, on her. The custom of the Middle East in that day was to greet one another with a kiss on the cheek. Several times in the New Testament, we are told to greet one another with a holy kiss, the equivalent of our modern handshake. Most likely, the kiss found in the Gospel of Philip had to do with a friendly greeting and not a romantic expression. Regardless, there is no claim in the New Testament or the Gnostic Gospels that says Jesus was married, let alone married to Mary Magdalene. The New Testament mentions that Jesus had a stepfather, a mother, brothers, and sisters. If Christ had been married, why is there no mention of his wife? Likewise, when Christ was dying on the cross, he made provision for his mother. Had Christ been married, he would have made the same provision for his wife. The name Mary Magdalene identifies this Mary from others named Mary in the New Testament. It means she was the Mary from the town of Magdala. If she were Christ's wife, why isn't she identified as Mary, the wife of Jesus? Other women who traveled with Jesus were identified by their husbands, such as Joanna, the wife of Chusa. One of the women at the cross is called Mary, the wife of Cleophas, but Mary Magdalene is simply called Mary Magdalene. In 1 Corinthians 9:5, Paul notes that Peter and other apostles were married and that their wives traveled with them. If Christ had been married, Paul would have used that as an example as well. Instead, the New Testament presents Jesus Christ as the bridegroom who is betrothed to a particular woman, the church. In the book of Revelation, Christ stands with 144,000 unmarried male virgins on Mount Zion. Why would he be with this group if he were married? All of this provides evidence to what the overwhelming vast majority of historians, scholars, and theologians recognize. Jesus Christ was not married. The Da Vinci Code decrees that it was not Peter to whom Christ gave directions with which to establish the Christian church. It was Mary Magdalene. Jesus was the original feminist. He intended for the future of his church to be in the hands of Mary Magdalene. While this claim may be encouraging to feminists, it is not based on historical facts. First, no such statement can be found in the Gnostic Gospels. Second, some of the statements in the Gnostic Gospels are disparaging to women. Third, and of extreme importance, the New Testament is tremendously liberating to women and men. The book makes reference to the Gnostic Gospel of Mary as the source for the declaration that Christ wanted the church to be in the hands of Mary Magdalene. However, the Gospel of Mary makes no such claim. While the writer does place Mary in the respectful position of a teacher, it does not speak of her gaining authority to lead the church. Instead, it talks about a special vision given to Mary by the resurrected Christ regarding salvation and everlasting life. Additionally, there are some very disparaging comments in the Gnostic Gospels regarding women. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, concludes with Peter stating that Mary Magdalene should leave their presence because women are not worthy of life. Christ's response to Peter's statement is equally disheartening. The writer has Jesus saying, "I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven." One must also consider the possibility of sexual abuse exemplified in some Gnostic movements. The Da Vinci Code talks about hieros gamus, sacred marriage or sacred sex. As mentioned earlier,